CBSE Board, Class 10, History, Chapter 1, Part 3, Audio by Rennie Matthew. We need to look at the mixed reactions towards the French Revolution and its impact. In the areas conquered, the reactions of the local population to French rule were mixed. It is not that everybody was okay for the present rule or the changes. Of course, when you bring about some change, there will be people who will oppose it and who will support it also. In many places such as Holland and Switzerland, as well as in some areas like Brussels, Mainz, Milan, Warsaw, the French armies were welcomed as harbingers of liberty. So all these people in all these places, they welcomed the French armies and they also saw it as something, a harbinger which will signal them the approach of another for their security. So there was a lot of enthusiasm which was felt initially, but soon this enthusiasm transformed into hostility. And this hostility can be seen in the new administrative arrangements. So these new administrative arrangements promised a lot of things to the people, but it did not fulfill these promises with political freedom. People slowly understood that they were not given any form of political freedom. They couldn't move. The government or the present system was very rigid. The first point, there was increased taxation. Okay, that is something which really upset the whole of population. Second point is censorship. Unnecessary censorship. Like, of course, censorship is required, but when it goes beyond your freedom, when it curbs your freedom, censorship is not good. The third point is, it forced conscription into the French armies required to conquer the rest of Europe. So people were forced to join the French armies because they wanted to conquer the rest of Europe. So now it became conquering. The attitude of the people or the government was to conquer the rest of the places. Now when you look at the source box, you have a lot of source boxes given in your textbook all across the whole class. All the chapters will have source boxes. Don't take these source boxes so lightly because it will contribute to your understanding. Even if you don't study it by heart or just mug it up, you don't have to do that. You can use some points from these source boxes to explain your answer. There was a person, a philosopher by name Ernst Renan. He wrote about what is a nation. He delivered this lecture at the University of Sorbonne in 1882. I told you that he is a French philosopher, and he gave a skeletal understanding of what makes a nation. Because so many people were struggling hard to make a nation, to create a proper nation. So this particular lecture was transformed into the famous essay, Qu'est-ce qu'une nation? Qu'est-ce qu'une nation? What is a nation? That is a French form of it. Those who have studied French will be familiar with it. In this particular essay, Renan criticizes the notion. Notion means the idea which was suggested by other people. They said that nation will have a common language, race, religion or territory. He said that I'm against it. He started criticizing. So what is his notion of nation? He told that a nation is the culmination for a long past of endeavors. To put it in other words, there will be a lot of struggle which a particular place faces. There will be a lot of sacrifices. There will be devotion. Many people will be killed. And that should have happened over a long period of time. So it is the summary of all these things, or when people have got this commonalities only, it forms a nation. There will be heroic past, great men, glory. That is a social capital upon which one bases a national idea. So based on this only we should form our national idea. So in order to have this common glories in the past, you should have a common will in the present. When you have so much of glories in the past, the present generation should have a common wish. It should have a common will. They should be supported with just one idea, one will. What is the will? To perform great deeds together, not individually, not for self-promotion, but together. To wish to perform still more. You shouldn't be happy with the deeds that you have performed. You should be able to perform more. You should thirst for more. And these are the conditions of being a people. This is when there is instilling of common ideas, unification. This is when a nation will grow together, when you have common will. You shouldn't be happy with the glorious past. You should have more things in the future to be done together. A nation is therefore a large-scale solidarity. It is not the solidarity of an individual. It is not the fortification of one person, but a large-scale wish, a large-scale will. That is large-scale solidarity. So this is the picture of Renan. He continues, he says that its existence is a daily plebiscite. A province and its inhabitants, if anyone has a right to be consulted, it is the inhabitant. If anybody has to be asked for consent, if the government has to take feedback, definitely the government will have to take feedback, and that should be from the inhabitant, not from only a few people. A nation never has any real interest. A nation will never be interested in annexing, in colonization and all that. That is selfishness, or holding on to a country against its will. If the citizens doesn't want them, they shouldn't hold to it. The existence of nations is a good thing. It is a necessity even. So when you have a national interest for the good, it is a necessity. But when it is for the bad, it leads to destruction. Their existence is a guarantee of liberty, which would be lost if the world had only one law and only one master. So liberty is very important. If the world had just one law and one master, this problem and question and significance of liberty will be lost. It is not that people should be given excessive freedom, but some freedom should be there so that they can express themselves. And that is very important. The second segment is the making of nationalism in Europe. How did it impact the other parts of Europe? And with all these philosophers' comments, how did nationalism come into being in Europe? So if you take a look at the map of mid-18th century Europe, you will find that there were hardly any nation states as we know them today. Nobody was interested in nation states. It was more of monarchy. It was more of selfishness. Germany, Italy, Switzerland, all these places were divided into kingdoms, duchies, cantons, whose rulers had their autonomous territories. Everybody had their selfish interest. They used to promote everything in the sake of the people. They used to make the people suffer. People did not have enough money to even buy bread. But the selfish interest of the rulers did not stop. Eastern and Central Europe were under autocratic monarchies, means they had their own way of ruling. They did not consult anybody. Within the territories, they had their own style of implementing laws. They took laws without consulting anybody. And these people had to live by the law. The diverse people, when so many people were together, they had to live by the law. So because of that, people did not feel that they were sharing a collective identity or common culture. If you ask them, what do you tell about your country? They will say, oh, it's a hell. So collective identity, collective oneness was not felt. Often they even spoke different languages. So when they spoke different languages, they belonged to different culture. They had different ethnic origin also. So commonality, oneness and all these things were not felt eventually. See, obviously it will not be French because it is of difference. A lot of difference is there. So one example is given in your text. The Habsburg Empire, which ruled over Austria-Hungary. It was a patchwork of many different regions and people. If you have a cloth, which is so good, silk cloth for example, and it is having some small bit of the cloth is torn away, you will do some patchwork on it by taking maybe a similar color. Suppose the silk cloth is pink in color. You will take a similar cloth, somewhat same texture also, everything, and you will stitch it onto that torn part so that it will be hidden. But do you think that finishing will be obtained when you do that? It is of course known as a patchwork. You're doing something extra on the cloth which is not its original, which is not of its original texture. Something extra is done, some mending work is done. So that was the case of Austria-Hungary. Patchwork was there. Different regions and peoples constituted this particular place, Austria-Hungary. And this included the Alpine regions, the Tyrol, Austria, and Sudetenland. Also, it included Bohemia. And there the aristocratic government was felt. It was very dominating. It was predominant. And people spoke only German. Apart from German, it included a few people who spoke Italian. Provinces spoke Italian of Lombardy and Venetia. Others, all majority spoke German. So this is the example. It was a patchwork. So when you have such a patchwork in France, you will not have this collective identity or common culture or common interest even. So in Hungary, half of the population spoke Magyar, while the other half spoke variety of dialects. So imagine the case when you have to speak itself, it is so sonorous. So many languages, so many culture. In Galicia, the aristocracy spoke Polish. So that is why it is known as the patchwork. Now taking a look at this map, this is Habsburg Empire, and look at how colorful it is. It is so colorful when you look away, but it included all these people, Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, everybody was there. It was a patchwork. It was very difficult to rule such a place also when there is no unity. Right? Even India has got a lot of culture and tradition. Alright, but still we are unified. We have got common interest also. When that is not there, it is difficult. So beside these three dominant groups, there lived within the boundaries of the empire a mass of subject peasant people. So apart from all these main people, we have peasants also. Bohemians and Slovaks to the north. You have Bohemians and Slovak to the north. Slovenes in Carniola. Here you have got the Slovenes. Croats to the south. This part you have got the Croats. Romans to the east in Transylvania. You have got the Romans here. So look at the difference. As I'm calling out the name of the people itself, it is different, all these places. So have the map in front of you when you study it. So such differences did not promote a sense of political unity. Did you understand? Political unity was not promoted because of all these reasons. The only tie which bound them together, if there was a tie which bound these diverse groups, was a common allegiance to the emperor. They were scared of the emperor. They were tied under one emperor. That is the only thing which they shared. Otherwise, nothing was shared. There was no common interest. They did not have any commonalities. So they existed as different places. No national feeling was there. The aristocracy and the middle class. There is a major question which is typed on top. How did nationalism and the idea of nation state emerge? How did people get the idea of nationalism? How did nation state come into being? So first we start with the condition of the aristocracy and the new middle class. There was a lot of change which was felt socially and politically. A landed aristocracy was the dominating class of the continent. And once again repeating, I know that you are very sure of who constituted the aristocracy. But who included the aristocracy? The first point is, the members of this class were united by a common way of life. Common way of life in the sense, they lived a life which was completely different from the ordinary people. They had riches, the way they dress, the way they spoke, everything was different. That is how it was common for the aristocratic people. And that cut across regional divisions. It was common. They also owned estates in the countryside and also town houses. Everybody had a possession. They also spoke French for purposes of diplomacy and in high society. So people belonging to the highest strata of society did not speak any other language. French was the language of the aristocratic people. They only encouraged French. Latin was spoken by the church. Their families were often connected by ties of marriage. So everybody was interconnected. So these were the 4 common points of the people belonging to the aristocratic class. Very important point.